President Trump now formally asking the Supreme Court to block the release of White House documents to the House Select Committee investigating the Capitol riot. Let's get right to CNN's Justice correspondent Jessica Schneider. Jessica, fill us in on this new filing.
Yeah, Anna, so Trump's legal team right here asking for two things. They want the justices to consider this case and schedule arguments, since they're arguing that this case raises novel issues of executive privilege, mostly how much weight a former president has to assert that privilege. But more importantly, and probably more pressing for the former president, his lawyers now are asking the justices to keep any turnover of documents on hold while they decide whether to take up the full case. And specifically, their filing says this. They say, the limited interest the committee may have in immediately obtaining the requested records pales in comparison to President Trump's interest in securing judicial review before he suffers irreparable harm. So Trump's legal team so far has been successful blocking hundreds of documents from actually being handed over to the committee, despite the fact that they lost at both lower courts below. And these records really would be key for the committee to find out exactly what Trump was doing on and leading up to January 6th, because these records, they include handwritten notes from his then Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, drafts of speeches, also visitor and call logs from the White House, all of it Trump wants kept secret. But of course, the current president, Joe Biden, he has said that he would not block the documents, that they should be handed over to the committee, especially in light of what happened January 6th. And so far, the two courts who have heard this case have agreed. They say the documents belong to the office of the president, not Trump himself, and that President Biden, the current president, is the one whose decision should prevail here. So, Anna, we'll see if the Supreme Court takes up this case, if they continue to block those documents in the meantime. It's important to underscore here, though, until the Supreme Court makes a decision whether they'll hear the case, whether they'll continue to block the documents will, in fact, be blocked. They won't be handed over to the committee just yet. But uncertain how quickly the court could make those decisions. It could be a while, Anna.
He waited to the last day of that two-week pause on the last court's ruling to file this appeal. Thank you, Jessica Schneider. Let's discuss with CNN legal analyst Norm Eisen. He was special counsel for House Democrats in Trump's first impeachment trial. He was also the White House ethics czar in the Obama administration. Also joining us, former Democratic Senator from Alabama, Doug Jones, who is also a former federal prosecutor, and CNN political commentator and former Republican congressman from Pennsylvania, Charlie Dent. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being on with us. Let me start with you, Norm. What do you think the Supreme Court does with this, and how quickly could they act?
Anna, thanks for having me back. The court gets hundreds and hundreds of these applications every year, and when there's no legal basis for providing relief, including a stay, it doesn't take them up. That's what they should do here. A former president, as the two lower courts have held decisively, a former president has no more right to assert executive privilege over documents than he does to take the resolute desk or the portrait of Washington by Gilbert Stuart with him when he leaves. His responsibilities end. He has an opportunity to be heard. He has been heard. So there's no sound legal basis. The court should deny this, and they should deny it briskly, likely in January. However, it's very perilous to predict what they'll do. Using reason and logic as a guide, there should be no further stay and no further delay, but we'll have to see what they think.
Right. And as Jessica pointed out, so far the strategy to delay is working for the former president, given this all began back in October when he initially filed a suit to block the documents here. Senator Jones, he's trying to keep secret about 700 pages of records from the National Archives, call logs, schedules, notes from his advisors, including his former chief of staff. How crucial is the outcome here for this committee to get answers?
Well, I think it's very important. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it. I am really impressed with the way this committee has methodically gone about the process of investigating what happened on January 6th. I mean, they have really done a very good job in a very bipartisan or almost nonpartisan way. And so it's really important. And the fact is, and I really think that this is moved quickly. I mean, this was first started in October with the issuance of these subpoenas. We're now just at the end of December, and it's already already at the United States Supreme Court. This is moving along pretty quickly, and as compared to so many other things that move through the court systems. So I think Norm's right. I think that they should dismiss it. Whether they will or not, though, I think they'll come to an early conclusion, and it's going to be important not just for the president, but other people like Mark Meadows and other folks are looking at what happens there too. It may be why the Supreme Court takes it up, because there's going to be others are going to be looking at what they decide.
That is such a good point. And on that note, the committee is also awaiting a response from Republican Congressman Jim Jordan, and they've requested he voluntarily meet with the committee. You'll recall Jordan forwarded a message on January 5th to Trump's then Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. That was basically a coup memo. Congressman Dent, Jordan has said in the past he has nothing to hide. Should he have to testify before his colleagues?
Well, Anna, I predicted that Scott Perry would decline to testify before the committee voluntarily, and I suspect that Jim Jordan will do the same. You're right, even though he has said he has nothing to hide. I think this is a harder call for Jim Jordan because Jim Jordan has been a leader on the Judiciary and Oversight Committees where he's been involved with the issuance of subpoenas, and I think this is going to be a very hard call for him, but I think he's going to have to answer, for his messages, the one that's been talked about quite a bit that he forwarded, so he said. So I think Jim Jordan's got a lot to think about right now, and like I said, if I'm a betting man, I bet that he does not voluntarily testify before that committee.
He hasn't responded just yet to their letter, Norm. He's the second Trump ally to receive an interview request this week. GOP Congressman Scott Perry, who Congressman Dent just mentioned, he has already declined the committee's request to voluntarily sit down with investigators. Is there any reason you think the committee wouldn't move to issue a subpoena to Congressman Jordan, assuming he also declines the request to come forward voluntarily, or to Congressman Perry?
I think that they are being careful and smart in how they're proceeding. They're focusing their energies on things like this Trump document fight, which is moving at an extraordinary pace. Doug is certainly correct about that. They're not overloading the system with these litigation fights. So I suspect they're going to tread lightly. The Jordan information, Perry's important, but the Jordan information is so critical. He did forward that right before the insurrection on January 5th. He did forward that bogus argument that the vice president could essentially overthrow the election when presiding on January 6th. We know he had conversations, Anna, with the president, including on January 6th, in that critical period of delay in responding to the insurrection. So he's such an important witness. We'll see what the committee does, but I do think that there may be a need to proceed with more firmness against him. That means a subpoena.
Ever since the election and the insurrection there at the Capitol, voting rights have been under attack. And Republican state legislatures have already started enacting voting restrictions ahead of the crucial 2022 midterms. In an interview just yesterday with ABC News, President Biden says he supports making an exception to the Senate filibuster rules in order to pass voting rights legislation. Listen to this.
Whatever it takes, change the Senate rules to accommodate major pieces of legislation without requiring 60 votes. So the only thing standing between getting voting rights legislation passed and not getting passed is a filibuster. I support making an exception on voting rights for the filibuster.
Senator Jones, this is such an important discussion because it really goes to the core of the democracy, Americans' rights to vote. The problem here for Democrats is they don't have the votes they need in the Senate to change the filibuster, even with this one issue. They need all Democrats to be on board. And both Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema have said not going to happen. So what are your thoughts on this? How do you get there?
Well, I think that there's still a lot of discussions going on about changing Senate rules. Clearly, the filibuster is not going to be eliminated, and quite frankly, I don't believe there's going to be any carve-outs. But that's not to say that there's not going to be a change in the Senate rules. I think there's a lot of discussions ongoing that include Senator Manchin, that include Senator Sinema, to change the rules, to go back to where the Senate was at an earlier time with a talking filibuster, putting the majority in a different position. I think there's a lot of things that can be done. Quite frankly, I think that the dust-up over the last week about the Build Back Better plan is going to give Democrats an opportunity to really focus on voting rights as they come back in the new year and try to change these rules, because as the president said just a moment ago in the first part of your clip, the Senate needs to change some rules so that major pieces of legislation can be taken up by the Senate without requiring 60 votes. And I think that that's where we're headed, and I remain confident that Senator Manchin, Senator Sinema are going to work with the other Democrats to try to do just that, especially with regard to voting rights.